It's been a while since I had to quote Mr. Simon Black of sovereignman.com, but a good email came in, from him, which everyone gets if you subscribe to him, sovereignman.com. And he titles this, "And Now for the Bad News," which I think I'm going to keep the same title. It just fits. It's perfect. Santiago, Chile, where he's at. In the late 1760s, because again, you got to figure, just as I read this to you, what government or governments does this sound like today? In the late 1760s and early 1770s, the government of France was in deep panic. They had recently suffered a disastrous and costly defeat in the 7 Years' War, and the national budget was a complete mess. France had spent most of the previous century as the world's dominant superpower. Who does that sound like? And the government budget reflected that status. Well, who's the dominant superpower? And what kind of giant deficit do we have? Right. See where I'm going with this? From public hospitals to shiny monuments and museums, social programs, welfare, and public works projects, overseas colonies, and a huge military. Who has the most military bases on different countries? Oh, that's right, it's us. France had created an enormous cost structure for itself. Eventually, the costs of maintaining the empire vastly exceeded their tax revenue. And by the late 1760s, France hadn't had a balanced budget in decades. Debt was ballooning, interest payments were rising, and the government of Louis, was that the ninth? Or I'm not sure which one that it. Roman numerals. It's been long. XV. Or is that the whatever? Was desperate to do something about it. Yeah, maybe that's the 20th. Whatever. There's a famous story in which the Comptroller General of Finances summoned all the government ministers to make deep budget cuts. But no one could come up with anything substantial. The overseas colonies were too important to cut. Just like our little strategic spots, we can't get rid of those. We need those places. We need that airfield. We need just keep paying them money to let us be there. So the overseas colonies were just too important to cut. And you know how I used to refer to the Roman Empire and how it's like identical to the United States today? This is the same stuff. And funny enough, this was only, 300 something years ago? And it was France this time. And they happened to be the superpower that time. Like Rome was a superpower during its time. And now we have another superpower during our time, and that's us right now. And I just gave you two examples, and you know how this is about to end, right? Not going to end well. So how do you suppose it's going to end for us? Okay, but let me continue. And they couldn't cut public hospitals because too many people were now relying on them. Obamacare. 5% of the people who are super, super sick are causing 44% increases in our medical payments. We can't just throw them away. We also can't never turn anyone down. You're allowed to go to any hospital and get care regardless of if you have insurance or not, right? So, funny enough, they couldn't cut public hospitals because too many people were now relying on them. Do we have too many people relying on our health care, Obamacare now? We sure do. Similarly, they couldn't cut veteran pensions either. What? Pensions? You mean they had pensions too? That's correct, just like the Roman Empire did. At the end of the session, they could hardly find anything to cut that would make a meaningful difference. All of their fancy programs and benefits had become too ingrained in society at that point, and any cut would have proven politically disastrous. I thought of this story earlier this week when the U.S. government released a sweeping budget proposal that aims to cut the deficit over the next 10 years. In fairness, I'm always happy to see any government cutting spending. But before uncorking the champagne bottles, it's important to understand some basic realities. The budget slashes $3.6 trillion in spending through 2028. while proposing zero cuts to the biggest ones: defense, Social Security, and Medicare. And that's the entire point. Just between those three programs, plus paying interest on the debt, the U.S. government already spends more than it collects in tax revenue. In 2016, for example, the government spent $2.87 trillion on defense, Social Security, and Medicare, plus an additional $433 billion paying just the interest on the debt. That totals over $3.3 trillion, which is more than they collected in tax revenue. In other words, they could cut everything else in government: Homeland Security, national parks, funding for the arts, the Department of Energy, everything. And there would still be a budget deficit. Isn't that amazing? This is the most important thing to understand about U.S. federal government spending. The built-in costs are so extreme that they can't possibly make ends meet. And the problem becomes worse each and every year. Every single day, thousands of baby boomers join the ranks of Social Security and Medicare, which only adds to those programs' costs. This isn't some black magic prediction. The Social Security office has precise data on how many people were born in 1952, 53, and 54, etc. So they know with a high degree of certainty how many people will be receiving benefits this year, next year, and the year after that. The numbers just keep going up. Point is, if they don't cut Social Security and Medicare, nothing else in the budget really matters. And nothing else matters. Yeah, a little Metallica for you. All of the cuts they're proposing are financially trivial. It's like showing up to the hospital with stage 3 prostate cancer and asking to get a cavity filled. The more they delay the difficult choices, the greater the destruction becomes. Spending will continue to exceed tax revenue, which means the debt will continue to rise and the interest payments continue to increase. This cycle never, ever ends. The big, giant hope right now is that they'll be able to engineer gravity-defying economic growth, which should theoretically increase tax revenue. Again, this is a nice idea, but the projections are extremely unlikely. Looking back over the last 30 years, the average annual increase in real GDP per capita is just a measly 1.5%. The government's new proposal is based on the U.S. consistently achieving 3% growth year after year after year without any hiccup whatsoever. Even during the roaring 90s, there were only 3 times in which that figure was over 3%. Just 3 times. So, as you can see, this is extremely unlikely. But even if by some miracle the economy grows consistently by 3%, it still doesn't address the government's 46+ trillion problem with Social Security and Medicare. Right now, based on their own calculations, both programs are going to run out of money in a little more than a decade, and they estimate, the long-term costs of the program exceed revenue by more than $46 trillion. To see for yourself, refer to page 61 from the government's own financial statements, available here, which he puts a link in. I don't care. This is an email. I'm not going to link it to you. Note how the estimates get worse each year. Look, it's nice to be optimistic and hope for the best, and any attempt to cut the deficit is certainly better than adding to it. But it's dangerous and foolish to presume that everything is going to work out okay just because some rosy projection says so. The best case scenario is that they buy themselves a little bit of time, but the most likely result is still the same: default. The U.S. government has $20 trillion plus in obligations to its creditors and tens of trillions more in obligations to its citizens. Simply put, the government has too many obligations, and their only way out is to walk away from some of them. This means default. Given that the US dollar and US government debt underpin the global financial system, defaulting on their creditors would likely cause a worldwide panic that would make the 2008 crisis look like an afternoon picnic. Meanwhile, defaulting on their obligations to citizens entails deep cuts to, you guessed it, Social Security and Medicare. The younger you are, the more you can forget about counting on these programs as you get older. So it's time to start taking matters into your own hands and thinking through your own plan B. And my plan B has always been accumulating precious metals, and specifically silver. And in recent times, Bitcoin, Ethereum coin, and a little bit of Veritasium now, which the days was only lasted till the 25th to get on the initial offering. And I've heard that sometime between 30 to 45 days thereabouts, there should be the ability to find this coin now on some of the exchanges where you can trade it, buy it, sell it, etc. Do like we do with some of these other coins, sell it or flip it for another coin, etc. And that's my plan. But if and I heard Big say this, and by the way, I do agree completely with his statement. Big's weird. He said, don't forget when you're taking some profits on your cryptocurrencies, you may want to buy some metals with it, some precious metals like silver. Again, I don't know that we're going to be seeing these kind of prices, $17 now silver, too far into the future when all this crap's about to break loose. So I will mention it one more time. Silver Doctors, their website, sdbullion.com, and you will find the link in the description box below with my special link on it. sdbullion.com/jsnip4. Click on the link in the description box of this video. You'll see it. You can get a 10-ounce silver bar at freaking spot price for new customers to them. It is, I think it's called the Proclaim Liberty Silver Bar, 10 ounces. And yes, that's all 10 ounces at spot price. First-time customers only. They've set that page up for me and my subscribers. So I just want to share that with you. My game plan right now, as I said, I've got my silver. I'm happy with the silver I've got. Any extra money I got right now, I've been dumping into not precious metals, cryptocurrencies, because they're explosive right now. And I do want to get out of them. I will ultimately get the hell out of them completely. Like all gone. And I'm hoping if I could just time that right, and I think I might be able to, just maybe. I may be coming out here to do a video, as I've said, saying, guys, I just bought a house today. And I used to have one scenario, and that was, hey, I sold my silver today and bought a beautiful house cash because silver went up to such and such price. But then this thing happened with the cryptocurrencies. And I said, oh my God, could you imagine if I can do the same thing? Hey guys, I just did a video today, and in my video, I want to let you guys know I just bought a house today with cryptocurrencies that I had several thousands of dollars in ultimately. And I just bought a house with them because they went so crazy and didn't have to touch my silver. That's be the most beautiful video ever if I could do that. If I can time that and it actually goes up high enough, the price. But in all reality, it may be a combination of, hey, silver finally has gone up to a good price. Bitcoin and the other ones, they're gone up to a great price too. And I'm doing a little calculation in my head. If I sell off of what I got right now, plus some silver, not all silver, like, I can sell half my stash of silver, sell all my Bitcoins and whatnot, whatever I have, that's mine, and do the same thing. I'll be just as happy, and I'll be coming out here to do a video just as quick. Okay? So, anyways, take care. I'll see you next time.